My name is Titilayo, and I currently work as a lead business analyst at Durham University. In addition to my professional role, I also volunteer with ISCANET as a member of the communications and marketing team. So I'm very passionate about, helping people navigate their careers. I'm passionate also about, seeing them improve their professional skills. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much for that, Titi. And also, in addition, she's also part of our BA team too at
Yeah.
ISCANET. We are doing this podcast specially because you've been able to you've been able to transition from being an ex international student to becoming a skilled worker visa holder. And it's just also kind of to talk about your journey transitioning from being an ex international student to now becoming a skilled worker visa holder, so that's to be able to assist and motivate international students out there who will be able to resonate with your story, because everybody's story is quite very, very unique. And that's why we're having quite a number of people to come to the podcast to talk about their experience and their history. So, let's talk about your background a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your academic background and what initially brought you to the UK?
Um, so this question is quite interesting because whenever I tell people how I switched or transitioned to business analysis, they're like, "Wow, how did that happen?" Because I studied architecture, so I have a bachelor's degree in architecture. I've also got a master's degree in architecture, and then I decided, you know what, I want to come and do my MBA, but I don't want to do it in Nigeria. I wanted to do it here in UK. So that was me going online to search for schools where I could, apply to come study here and things like that. So I knew definitely that I didn't really want to pursue the architecture path anymore. I just wanted to go into business administration. So I decided to go opt for my MBA, which I did in leadership practice here in Scotland. And then coming in for my MBA, I decided to just fully go into the business world and just leave architecture alone for now. So that was my.
Okay, that's a very interesting one. Transitioning from an architectural background to now becoming a business analyst. I think we might probably just want to have this kind of conversation on how you can transition from a different career to probably a desired one. All right. But we can probably talk about that some other time. So, coming back to your background, right? So, when you arrive in the UK, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you faced during your initial job search?
Mm. I think I faced a lot of challenges, to be very honest with you. I faced a lot of challenges because um, I felt like when I first started out, because Matthew knows here that I worked with my uni as an international student ambassador. So sort
Yeah.
of getting that job was for me on I felt it was on a platter of gold because I didn't have to do too much. All they needed to see me do was just write a few notes on why I was, worthy of the role and things like that. And then just share with them my personal experience of, having contact with students, both international and foreign students and things like that. So it was quite an easy journey for me getting that role. So I felt, oh yeah, this is how it's always going to be. I wouldn't have to go through the stress of applying for jobs. Unknowing to me, when I came out of uni, the journey became such a roller coaster. I applied for so many jobs. Like in a day, I could apply for up to 50, like just passionately applying for any job. And I was like, I just want to get a role. Like, I don't want to be stranded here. I don't want to do any kind of menial jobs. I don't want to do anything that I'll be sort of not happy or fulfilled with. So it was a lot for me to comprehend. Like, but another thing I did prior to graduating was I started thinking and planning ahead of time that what do I want to do before graduate? Like, what do I want to do after schooling? What is my plan? What is my goal? And I was like, okay, I could go into IT, I could go into tech. And I was also thinking, okay, what if I'm going to tech? How do I begin? What experiences do I need to have? So I needed to sort of have my own skill sets in place. So what I did was to go into training. I had like a business analysis training, done for me, and then I sort of learned a lot. And applying, I made sure that I needed to start small. Although some of my friends were like, "Oh, why would you? You have an MBA. You should not be scared of going big. Like you have all the degrees that you need to, start this career." And I was like, "No, I want to start small in my career and then just go up the ladder." And till date, it's been amazing because a lot of people see me and they're like, "Wow, how did you move from that level, and then you're now at this stage in your career now?" So that was quite useful for me. So the whole journey wasn't actually quite simple, or it wasn't a bed of roses. Like, it was a lot of challenges. Martin knows about all the things I went through in terms of getting my CV right. my CV my CV was not the best structured CV. Like here in the UK, I believe you have to have a well, structured, concise CV. Like, put your bullet points, everything should be well structured. Put all your key achievements and things like that. Instead of me to come and say, "Oh, I've done this, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that," I was just writing all the roles without putting what my achievements were. So all of that needed to be reorganized. So I came to ISCANET for my help and said, "Please just help me look at this. What am I not doing well? What am I what do I need to do again?" And Matthew said, "No, Titi, we need to sit down on this CV. We need to restructure this." And then I went through that part, started getting job interviews. Like, so that was me crossing from the CV stage, application stage. I
Yeah.
got to the interview stage. It was another journey for me. That was even the most difficult part because sometimes people say, "Oh, once you've gotten invited for an interview, you're pretty much already in the organization." But it's not true because you have no idea how many people are more equipped or more, qualified for that role than you. So you just have to put your own
Yeah.
A game. You have to bring your all on for the interviewers. And I felt I knew my stuff. I felt I was confident, like I knew what I was doing, but I needed someone to just help me restructure how I present my experience to the interviewers, and that was a major change for me. So CV, interview prep, those are key things international students need to really learn when you come into the UK.
I just want to put it out there that Titi had a distinction with her MBA. So yeah, yeah, I know you're very, very humble, not want to talk about that, but yeah. Now let's talk about CV a little bit. All right. I would have probably loved to maybe share the before and the after of the CV, but we're not going to share that. I'm just going to allow you to talk about it. So how was it like streamlining your CV to be able to fit the BA role?
So I would say because my previous experiences were they were actually I had transferable skills, but for business analysis they needed to see much more than just the good communication and things like that. Like, they needed to know, oh, what other tools can you use, how have you engaged stakeholders and things like that. So I just
Hmm.
needed to think about my previous experience and see, okay, when I was working here, what did I do that was actually useful for my stakeholders? How did I interact there? And then transfer that into my CV for this other job I'm applying for. So that was how I needed to write that story, rewrite the story in a way that it was much more convincing that even if I'm not in the same field, I can still achieve the same thing. So it was much more about me rewriting my story and then personalizing it. So I needed to make sure I was not just writing, "Oh, I was helping with photocopying, printing, things like that. Like they don't need to know those tiny bits of tasks. They just need to know, okay, on a high level, what did you do that pertains to your role and how did it impact, the people you work for. So I needed to break down, okay, this was what I did, this was what I did, and this was the outcome. So in the CV, most like previous CV, I wasn't highlighting what the outcome was. I didn't write key achievements. I'm sure even right now, if I look at my previous CV, I'll be so ashamed. Like, no, no way. And then my CV, I was having things like date of birth, country of location, and things, very funny details that were just not necessary at all. So I needed to sort of revamp my CV and say, okay, you know what, I need to tailor it properly to this role and ensure that whatever skill I'm bringing on really matches and aligns with what they expect to see. Another thing I did was to look through their job description, read through it to see, okay, this is what they want, this is what they want. They want someone that can write this, they want someone that can use these tools. Any tools I see that I can't use, I say, oh, I can't use this one. But the ones I can use, I put it there. Oh, I can use VCO, I can use this, I can use that. I try to highlight all the things I've done. And then those tools as well well, I'm not a CV expert, but I try to personalize my CV as much as possible. So they can imagine me working in the workplace. They can imagine they can have a pictorial view of how I implemented my tasks at work. So I think that was what helped me a lot with my CV, because the moment I revamped my CV, thankfully, and thanks to the help of Matthew and the team, I started getting more calls, more calls. Like in a week, I had 6 interviews. So yeah, that was good.
Thank you so much for that. Because I know we're still going to come into the interview stage because now that we're having this conversation now, it's making me to now remember like it was just yesterday. It's kind of just to make international students to understand also that you cannot one CV cannot fit all job roles because every job roles have their own specific requirements. And it's not like you're lying or you're giving a false information because when you want to tailor your CV, you have to ensure that it tallies with what the requirement is from the organization that is looking to want to employ you. And it's very important that international students understand that you have to tailor your CV per the applications you want to make. So no one CV is going to fit all of the job roles that are out there. So now we've spoken about the challenge. I mean, you mentioned you had to apply to 50 jobs in a day. And I'm glad you even said that because quite numbers of international students would only apply for 2 or 3, 4, 5 jobs in a day and they think they've done something. No, they haven't. The UK job market is extremely, very, very competitive. So it's better for them to understand that you have to just keep applying, keep applying. And I'm glad that when we revamped the CV, you were able to now start getting a lot of interviews, within a week, which is fantastic. So now let's talk about the interview now. Okay, how was the interview preparation like? How did we work to ensure that you were able to at least um, get into the door, if I might say so? What was the experience like when you were preparing for the interview?
Yeah. So I think at the point of getting into the interview stage and then getting invites from recruiters for interview, I was really excited. I was super excited that wow, I'm nearly there, like close enough to get this. But and I think what other thing I did was I started reading a lot. Like if when you see me preparing for my interviews, I read a lot. Like I was reading like I was writing an exam. I read and read and read, watched videos on YouTube, did so many things. And then so that information saturation was just there. Like I was so, you know, I was so saturated with information. And then I'll just go to the interview and start pouring it all out and just start talking and saying so many things. Like you ask, tell us about yourself. I'm saying, oh yeah, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And it was just not working for me. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. Like it was a struggle because they'll say, oh yeah, you've done really well. And then the thing about interviewers here is I've noticed is except you go back for an actual review or feedback from them, they would always tell you at the end of your interview that you've done well. They'll say, oh, you've done fantastically well, like your interview went really well. And then the next thing you're getting is, unfortunately, sorry, we regret to inform you. So I was wondering what I was not doing well. I came to Matthew and I was just so sad. Like I was so sad. Like, how can I, like me, how can I not get jobs? Like, what's going on? What am I not doing well? I'd go first one, second one, nothing. So Martin asked me, was like, oh, okay, so can you tell me about yourself? And I started talking and I was like, yeah, I see what you're not doing well. So it was like a huge shock. It was a huge shock. Like, oh, okay, so I've actually not been doing something right. It was like, yeah, that you've gotten everything well. You know your stuff. You know what you're saying, and you sound so confident, but you are just not structuring your answers. You know all of those
Yeah.
things. So he started telling me, okay, so to see when they ask you this, you know how to say, but you need to present it in a particular way. They've got like the star technique you need to follow. You know things like that,
Yeah.
your mannerism, how you present your answers, it all matters. Like they all want to see results. So I said, oh,
Hmm.
okay. So I said, okay, let me just take this and try it for the next interview. And it was the next interview I went for, and I got the job. Like it was amazing. I called him. I was like, "Oh, so this was this was the only issue I had," and he was like, "Yeah, is that simple?" So so that's the thing for international students. We have that experience back home of trying to cram information, just wanting to say, oh, this is what my role entails. They ask you, okay, what does it take to be an accountant? You say, oh, yeah, I just go on the system and do this. But you're not really coming to give them results. You're not telling them what the result of that action was. So that was
Hmm.
sort of a culture shock for me because I didn't think they would expect me to give all that information. I had the able, I just didn't feel it was relevant. But then, like you said, you have to just sell yourself. Like it's marketing. Like you have to they don't know you did those things. So make them know that you can achieve these things and you've done it before. So that was how, I sort of landed my first role. And yeah, the first I'm here today. Happy.
No, Titi, I am very, very glad. And I think I like what you said, what you mentioned around in the UK, the interviewer will always praise you after the interview, even though you didn't do well than the other people. I think it's just a culture. All right. Every interviewer wants to be polite, and like you said, if you don't go back to go and ask for feedback, they're not going to provide you with feedback.
Yeah.
But international selection didn't get it wrong. It's not all companies that provide feedbacks, but there are quite numbers of few companies that are very, very nice and very, very articulate with their feedback when you ask. If you don't ask, they're not going to provide you. And the way you ask also matters too. You have to write in the right way. You have to ask the question in the right way for the feedback. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Titi. It has been quite a journey, and then we are happy you're where you are at the moment. you know. So over time now, what are kind of experiences you've been able to pick on your role? Because I remember that we had to go through some technicalities to we I know at that time we had to go through some job description to be able to pick some questions from the job description during the mock interview that we were also doing to help you structure your response. So over time now, being on the skilled worker visa, what are the skills you've been able to add to your old skills or to your current skills?
Okay. Um, I think I've um, I've had to, learn new things on the job, like some new skills that were not necessarily related to my role per se. So I'd had to, learn um, some new platforms, things like, for instance, I would say Azure DevOps right now for project management, which was in my previous roles, I didn't know how to use those things. It was just mostly VCO and things like that. But all of this other tools that would require me to communicate with the other members of the team, for transparency and things like that. I needed to go learn them, so I don't look like a novice. So I had to go on YouTube, search, okay, how to use this, how to, you know, learn how to use this other tool and things like that. So, but all the other tools, I would say, they were still the same thing, like the basic tools I sort of knew how to use. So it was more like tools I needed to. So things like um Azure, for instance, for testing, they needed in my role someone who could help them with testing, user acceptance testing, and things like that. So I needed to go and learn that, which I can also add to my CV that I've done. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no skill that's lost. There's no knowledge that's wasted. So those were
Yeah.
the little things I, added. And then other
Hmm.
tools like Excel. So I started sort of venturing into data analysis in a way just to learn how to present,
Yeah.
um, data and things like that. Power BI. I started
Hmm.
just learning it little by little.
That's fantastic, Titi. And I think I mean like it should be nice to put it out there. Titi is always very, very passionate about learning. It's I love that zeal with you. You're always wanting to learn, you're always asking numerous questions.
And
And
I
that's the
know,
thing with international students. Some international students are kind of too shy to ask the question. You ask the question because you don't know and you want to know. That doesn't make you weak. You become
yeah.
weak when you don't ask the question, and then you need that guidance. And I tell international students that the set of people you come in contact with first in the UK would either make your journey smooth or will either probably not make your journey smooth.
I needed to also learn some UI UX tools. So, like where I worked previously, they didn't have anyone like a UI UX designer. They didn't have a user researcher, and I said, "Oh, these are things you have a background in architecture, like you know how to do
Hmm.
graphic design." So I went. I used
Hmm.
Balsamic, Figma. I used Canva. Like I just had to look for different tools to put together. And then when I presented it, they were like, "Wow, what tool did you use to achieve this?" And I was like, yeah, I just did it. Just did it. If you as an international student come into an organization where they lack in that area, you would really soar high when you come out and you support in those things that would have
Yeah.
required them spending much more money on. So I think that's one important thing that sort of helped me as well in all my roles. I think that's one thing that helps.
Thank you so much for that point, Tete. And I think the word there is value. You are able to add value to the team, and the team or the management are also recognizing that value which you bring to the team. And that is the confidence that they now have in you. So it's going to be easier for them to recommend you for bigger roles moving forward. So which is great. And that became a result of your continuous hunger for learning new things. Like you said, you had to go learn these things on your own, which is good. And I think that's what most international students probably fail to want to do. You don't want to continue to stay within your comfort zone. You want to go out of your comfort zone and do things that are not very comfortable. Stretch yourself a little bit. So I think I wanted to talk about the skilled worker visa application process. What was the process like?
Well, I think it was, I wouldn't say it was challenging, but um it required me reading a lot about regulations. So I needed to understand what the application process will entail, what I needed to pay for, what my organization will pay for. So it's just for me, I had to stay informed about visa requirements, and getting that consistent communication with my employer as well, just to let them know, okay, this is the documents required. Have you sent it over to them? Like that back and forth. Because I noticed my visa it was taking too long to come out. So I kept going back to say, okay, why is there a delay? Because if you don't go back to them, they will just be relaxed. They are not you. You're the one that needs you're the one that needs the visa. So they're just relaxed and they were like, oh, it's nothing to worry about. And in my head, I was like, okay, my other visa is running out in the next few weeks. I need to get this one out. Like, I cannot be stranded. So I sort of started seeking for support as well. I met with uh, Matthew again to ask some questions in terms of what the requirement was, what, like, especially when it was delaying, and he said, "Oh, Titi, no, don't worry, just relax. It's going to come out." Because I was like, "Okay, I want to be sure that I've not done anything wrong.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want any potential issue." So in the application process, I also needed to make sure it was well laid out, all the information I needed to put out for them to see. I added all that information. Like, I tried not to confuse home office. So everything has to just be as transparent as possible.
In your own word, what is the advice you're going to give to international students currently in the UK? Not just international students alone, but international students and their dependents who are currently in the UK and seeking for sponsored jobs or any kind of jobs.
Well, I will just say that we need to all keep learning, like learn, like upskill, upskill. Like, don't say, "Oh, I want to remain in this role and I'm comfortable." No, don't say that. Like, if you've gotten to this level, what's the next thing? Keep growing, keep developing. Continuous development is so important. Like, because the job market is evolving, there's a lot of change, it's dynamic. So you need to keep, you know, improving yourself, learning new things. Go on LinkedIn, join various platforms, for professional development. And then another thing is the value of volunteering, like ensuring that you're still in that space of um um growth, because volunteering
Hmm.
brings growth and it enables you to
Yeah,
network as well. So I think that has been
yeah.
one thing that has helped me, even with volunteering with ISCANET, the fact that I've learned a lot. I've worked with developers, I've worked with the marketing
Hmm.
team, I've learned about
Yeah.
social media, ways and how to sort of communicate and market things
Hmm.
on social media,
Hmm.
which is something I never
Hmm.
was involved in previously. So you can't
Yeah.
underestimate how much doors or the open doors it would bring for you, and the unexpected
Yeah.
opportunities you would have when you volunteer
Hmm.
and try to network as much as possible. Like, I've, one thing even at work that we do is try and go to various forums, try to interact with other organizations and institutions to understand how they do things and things like just try to step out of your comfort zone, see the world from a different lens, because you cannot survive in a siloed environment. Like, you just have to keep growing. The world is a much we grow in as a community, not as individuals. Like, there's power in
Yeah.
unity. Like, when we it's, like they say, two people are greater than one person. So you need to
Yeah.
keep networking and learning. You can never stop learning. So believe in yourself,
Hmm.
as they always say, and really the sky is just the stepping stone. Yeah.
I am not going to add anything to what you've said. You've said it all for the international students, and I'm sure that they have listened and then they will try to probably rewrite their own story too here in the UK. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to join us on the podcast, and I wish you all the best